Hi, everyone. Let's start off by talking about the retail sales this morning. Then we'll talk about the max pain for options on the SPY. Then we'll get straight into the charts. And then we'll talk about my terrible trading for today and what really tripped me up and my thoughts going into tomorrow. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So retail sales went up 3% in January, which was pretty dramatic. The expectation was 1.9%, again indicating that the American consumer is still strong, the economy is still strong, the jobs market is strong, and inflation is still strong. So we had 0.5% month-over-month inflation from the CPI data. And that's also reflected here in the fact that people are still buying things and retail is continuing to stay strong. They say food and beverage services surged 7.2%, motor vehicles and dealer parts increased 5.9%, home furnishings 4.4%. They do mention that receipts at service stations were flat despite a slight uptick in gas prices. Online retailers did well at 1.3%, and electronics and appliances were up 3.5%. And just to highlight how strong it was, no category saw a decline following December, which fell 1.1%. So big up move from the previous month, and people are still out there buying things, and the economy is still fairly strong. So for tomorrow here, you can see max pain is actually 413. You can see all the options are stacked right on top of each other here at 413. You don't always finish right there, but keep in mind 413 is likely to be your center point. If we get too far from that on the SPY, you're probably going to move back in that direction. You can see what that looks like for options already in the market. Lots of 410 puts, continues to be a high level. 411, 412 puts, lots of puts at those levels. And then 412 calls. So really right in there around 412, 413 is where you expect the market to finish. And you can see what that looks like in terms of total dollars. If we finish super far in the puts, lots of people make lots of money, and same for calls. Usually we're going to end up right here in the middle where the least amount of people make money. But jumping over here to Friday, I do want to highlight super big difference here. You can see max pain is at 402 for Friday, so significantly lower than we are right now. You would expect the market to move in this direction for Friday, not necessarily tomorrow, but going into Friday, keep in mind that the max pain is much, much lower. Lots of puts down at 375, 380, even still here at 400. But once you get into this 405, maybe 410 here to 418, somewhere in this zone. Like we said, max pain is at 402. So right here between these two peaks, definitely a potential that we see a decent down move on Friday. Looking at options in the market, though, you can still see lots of 410 puts. Definitely still puts in the market there. Decent amount of 412 calls as well as 415. Still a little bit more calls here right at the money compared to puts. So keep that in mind going into tomorrow. You can see max pain way down here at 402 compared to what we've seen recently in that 412 to 413 range. Moving over to the charts, it's super unfortunate because I was really well positioned for a day like today. We did see that weakness from the after hours continue into the morning. You can see we gapped down, fell all the way to 410, found strong support at 410, and then rallied all the way up to 414, finishing above the day's high yesterday. I thought yesterday's high would be a little bit bigger point of contention at 413.50. Didn't quite work out that way, so now we're looking to 414.50. And then we have that next big wick up here at 416.50. And then if we get above that, then we're looking to about 418. That would be the most recent high. And then jumping up to the 1-day view here, you can see if we do get above all of these previous highs, like we talked about before, we're looking at this next trend line of resistance sitting up around 427 to 430. So seems like this middle trend line is starting to be an area of much stronger support. This might be a bull flag, and it seems like we're breaking out here now, which if you factor that in, the move into the bear flag was about 6%. Therefore, the move out should be about 5 to 6%, which does take you up to that next trend line of resistance. And that might be the situation that we're in now, and that's kind of what we have to deal with. It did kind of look like we were going to get a little bit bearish on the day early in the session, but those wicks started to come in, and the rest of the day was pretty strong. Moving over to the 5 and the 15 on the NASDAQ, I just want to highlight where I got really chewed up. So in this early portion of the session, we were really range bound, getting pretty choppy, and I really felt like we were going to go sideways based on the data being pretty good. But with good data and retail sales means a strong economy and means that the Fed can continue to keep rates higher. And we will talk that a little bit more when we get over to yields. But otherwise, I thought a strong retail sales would be a little bit mixed in terms of strength with the Fed and strength with the economy fighting against each other. So I thought this was going to be a little bit more of a range-bound day, and I was starting to trade it that way. I took off most of my positions early in the session, which turned out to be a big mistake. All of my positions were pretty bullish, and they would have worked out quite great. Unfortunately, I got chewed up in here, and then we saw this bigger rally, and I tried to start shorting these highs. Did get a little bit of move down, but then we got stopped out. Found that rejection level from this previous trend line. Saw a strong rejection, which was good. And then we had a lot of choppy price action in here. Started to make some lows, couldn't quite break out either. And then once we finally got the breakout, then you had a fairly clear move to the upside until we got to here. Seemed like we might get rejection, but it pushed right through that up into this longer term trend line, where we did get the clear rejection pretty strongly all the way down to 307.60. And then after we found kind of a double bottom, a little bit lazy double bottom here, and the RSI even ticked lower with the lower low, indicating that there's potential that this could go lower. And then we broke through this trend line and rocketed much, much higher, almost to 310 here after hours. So ridiculously strong. I managed to make up just a small amount of money, but really just not good trading for me here today. If I had left my positions alone, I would have been in a couple $100 profit and been much happier. But unfortunately, this early portion of the session really got me off my game, and then I really couldn't reestablish myself, unfortunately, into the rest of the day. Moving over to the longer term charts on the hour and the 4 hour, you can see we're right at that trend line. Once again, I thought that would be a stronger area of resistance, but it seems like we're pushing through it here after hours. You can see we got that initial rejection, then we pushed right back up into that zone. Very interesting here. We do get through that, again, kind of like a bull flag here. When we get through that level, then there's quite a bit of upside potential, at least looking to the previous highs at around 314. That would be very strong. And then if we can get through that level, who knows where we're going after that, maybe 316, 317, which would be quite a bit of upside, several percentage points of upside from where we are right now. Despite the fact that we're already kind of overextended here, you can see the 1 hour in almost overbought conditions. 4 hour, not nearly as extended, but definitely concerning that the hourly is in overextension already. Otherwise, looking at the 4 hour, not much to add. Bullish momentum, bullish trend lines, breaking out to the upside. Really should have been a straightforward day, but I just couldn't get my hands around it. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, quite a bit cleaner on the charts. You can see the Russell touched that trend line and then rocketed straight higher. No chop here in the mid session, just went straight up and looked very good throughout the day. Not much to say there. Broke out of this previous trend line, looking to about 195.50 for the next resistance. If you get through there, then you're looking at probably 197 as the next level of resistance. So currently looking at about 50 cents of upside. And then if we get through that resistance, another $2 or so. Looking at the Dow, looking at that trend line at 342.40. Been talking about that zone for a while. That's right into this previous high, the one that we've already retested and got rejection. Retested once more, got rejected. Now we're getting back into that zone for a third time in just a couple of days here. Usually you would expect it to break through if we've retested that many times in that short of a period of time, but definitely something to watch going into the Dow for tomorrow. Looking at the indicators, you can see almost overbought here on the hourly. On the Russell, momentum bullish, not nearly as overbought here on the Dow, and momentum is also bullish. Moving over to Apple, you can see here sitting right at the previous highs, broke most of these recent highs. Then we're just looking at the previous wicks at about 157 for the previous high. Certainly could go higher. And if we do get above that level, then you're looking to about 160, 170, 162 in this zone up here. Moving over to Tesla, it looks like we're getting above that trend line after hours. We tested it throughout the session here. Got multiple rejections you can see here in those down wicks, and they were quickly bought back up. And now it looks like we're just above it here after hours. Momentum is bullish. Overbought conditions on the 4 hour. Looking at Apple, momentum bullish. Moving in the bullish direction on RSI, but not overbought yet. If we do push through these next highs, you would expect it to get into overbought conditions, and then it will be questionable whether we can go any higher from there. But right now, everything is still bullish. Can't say much about it. Moving over to Google and Meta, you can see we got that push up like we talked about yesterday. We saw this reversal indicator After we moved down, quickly reversed, indicating this was probably going to break to the upside. And that's what we got here today. Got above 50 on RSI. Momentum is bullish. You'd expect this to get up to that 100 level. Paused right at the previous lows here. That was our first price target. And then we're looking at 100 for our next price target, right around that 50 EMA on the 4-hour chart. Moving over to Meta. Not a lot to say here. Continues to drift, continues to be stuck between the 21 and 55 EMAs on the 4-hour chart. Basically no momentum to speak of, slightly bearish on RSI, but not a lot to say here yet on Meta. Moving over to AMD and NVIDIA, let's hit these one more time here. You can see AMD continuing to hold in this consolidation area. NVIDIA got rejection off of that previous high. Found some support at the 21 EMA and is moving higher into the after hours. Based on this rejection and push higher, you would expect to get that new high tomorrow. If you don't get the new high tomorrow, then you would expect to get that third rejection and a push lower. Definitely something to watch out for. Momentum weak here on the 4-hour. RSI still showing quite strong. Very similar on RSI here between the two. And similar on momentum, honestly. So looks fairly strong. But if it's going to break, you want it to happen tomorrow. Moving over to consumer staples and consumer discretionary, not much to say here in terms of changes. Staples did find a little bit of support. It's still chopping within this range though, so still fairly range bound within this zone. But it did move a little bit higher here today. Momentum still lacking. RSI did move through the 50s, so slight bullishness. But over here on consumer discretionary, you can see rallying really aggressively, looking like a cup like we talked about yesterday. Momentum ticking higher, RSI ticking higher, indicating that there is still risk in the market and that we are still willing to take it. Moving over to the NASDAQ divided by the SPY, I definitely don't throw this into every video, but I thought it was worth noting here. We got back up into that trend line that we were breaking down from, found support at the 144 EMA, and now we're pushing up through that level, getting close to the highs here. Previous high going back to Tuesday the 2nd is 3.07. We're at 3.06 right now. If you do get into that zone and push higher, then you have to be looking for extreme bullishness in the NASDAQ, especially versus the SPY. Anytime that the NASDAQ is leading, that usually leads to higher prices. Moving over to transportation, still choppy, still bullish price action, very strange in terms of momentum on the daily chart. You can see we're continuing to get steps down into bearish momentum, but we're continuing to get bullish days. Very strange. Definitely not a common thing to see. Usually when you're getting consistent steps in one direction or the other, you're at least moving in that direction. That's not what we're getting here. You can see momentum on the 4-hour stepping down in that bullish direction. Does seem like we're going to break here to the upside. Probably looking for that 240 level and then 244 after that in terms of upward price targets. But right now, this is curious. I'm definitely watching this pretty closely. I would like to see these daily closes at least move in the direction of the momentum. If we're going to continue higher here on transportation, I would like to see a step down tomorrow in momentum. That's not what we're getting right now, and that's something that is a little bit concerning to me. This could be looked at as a bearish indicator, but right now we bounced off of the previous high and we're continuing higher, not quite getting close to new highs yet, but it is moving up at least slowly. Moving over to semiconductors on the 4-hour and the daily, not a lot to add here. Bullish momentum in both of these charts, stepping down on bearishness, moving in the bullish direction. Still can't quite get above the SMA on the RSI on the daily chart, which is a little bit concerning. Usually you get rejection off that level, but on the 4-hour, we did get above it. We did retest it and we are moving higher. You can see we're right at the highs. Once again here, if we're going to go, you would want it to go tomorrow. Tough trading when you gap down and then rally right back up to that same zone. But once again, like I said, if it's going to break, you want it to break now, go higher. Otherwise, we're going to get rejection, push through this trend, and then you would expect to get down to that 229 level. One way or the other, I would like something to happen so we can get out of this range and start moving in one direction or the other. Moving over to yields, not quite what you would expect with the markets moving higher here. You can see 2-year and 10-year both heading higher. 10 years a little bit stronger, making new highs. 2-year did make new highs, but then got rejection. Looks like it might make a new high on this candle. We'll have to take a look at that tomorrow. But as of right now, it's still below this previous wick from yesterday, moving sideways in a range here. You can see it's still bullish momentum based on the EMAs on both charts. Momentum here on the MACD stepping down for the 2-year, stepping up for the 10-year. Both are in pretty close to overbought conditions or already in overbought conditions here on the 10-year. But like I said, 10-year moving higher, 2-year basically moving sideways. Got a big wick from the retail sales announcement and seems to be edging higher here at least a little bit. But regardless of both of these things, markets continue to move higher. It seems like companies can do okay in a higher rate environment, but that really remains to be seen once we get into Q1 earnings, and we'll see if that is the reality. Moving over to the dollar, once again, you would think markets would have been moving lower with how strong the dollar was here today. Went all the way from 103.20 or so, all the way up to above 104. Markets just didn't seem to care. It was crazy how strong the dollar was today. Got above this previous high. Looks like we're coming in and back testing that level here now. You would expect it to find some support and then continue higher. Looking at about 104.75 as your next price target. Pretty much the highs of this previous range that we were in. Right now, we're still kind of stuck below that previous range, so it'd be good to see a nice push up through that range, get up to the previous high of that range. Then we'll see if we have the strength to push through that level, get into maybe 105.50, and then start looking to retest the 200 SMA on the daily chart, which is currently trading at 106.45. So that's a lot of upside from here, but it does look bullish and it does look like it's breaking out. And once again, surprising to me, the markets continue to move higher despite this strength here in the dollar. Moving over to the MACD, weakness on the hourly chart. You would expect that to reverse if it does find support here. RSI did get below the SMA, but it is well above the 50. You could come into this level, find support, and then get back into overbought conditions on the next rally. Otherwise, looking at the daily chart, continuing to move sideways on RSI, continuing to step higher here today and stay above the 50 level, indicating that this should be moving into some bullish price action here on the dollar. Moving over to JNK on the 4-hour chart, I just want to hit these longer term charts on JNK here today. You can see this long-term trend line that we're at right now. Did get below it pretty strongly here, but it marks multiple bottoms here in October and November, and that is right where we're at right now. You can see we even paused multiple candles here despite going through in December, came up, broke down, came up, gapped through, came back, retested, and then continued on. So this is a valid trend line here. And you can see we stopped multiple times at this level, and it does look like we're pushing a little bit higher here on JNK, momentum ticking in the bullish direction. We are at the SMA on the RSI here. Kind of look like we're breaking out of this trend line, getting back up to the 9 EMA here. If we get through that level, and then get through the 144 up at 92.03, so about 20 to 30 cents higher from where we are now, that would be a pretty good indicator that we might actually come back up and retest this previous zone. Maybe we get up to 92.50 or so, and then you would be looking for this to roll over. So short-term bullishness, maybe the rest of the week bullishness, and then into the end of the week, maybe into the end of next week, we get that sell-off. But right now, it does look like we found some solid support. We've effectively tested it 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and it does look like we're starting to move a little bit higher here. You kind of have a midpoint at 92.28. And if this does push through here, then you have a true double bottom and a push higher up into this 92.90, 93 zone, which would be that zone that captured almost all of these previous lows. Moving over to TLT, the 20-year plus Treasury ETF, you can see we sold off really strongly as yields moved higher. Found some support at the 92.50 level, which we said was a very strong level. This goes back a long, long ways, much, much further back than I can actually show here. You'd have to go up to the weekly or the monthly view to see it. But this is a very strong level. We did get into there, test it right on the money, and then found support into the end of the day. Does look like a wick rejection, potentially move back up to at least 103.50, maybe back up to this shorter term trend line at 104.20. But right now, looks bullish. Get a step down here on daily momentum. Hourly momentum is telling you you're going to go higher. RSI also looking to go higher. If we push through that and then get through the 50, that would be very strong. Similar to what we had here, where we did continue higher into the after hours. And then overnight, we lost that momentum and pushed down. But it does generally indicate more bullish momentum to come. So if you are going to trade bullish here, you're basically banking on the 102.50 level to hold as your level to put stops below. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX breakout that never was. You can see we broke out, double topped, came back in, retested, bounced slightly, gapped up, sold through that level, and now we're retesting. We're right back into this trend that we've been watching for a very long time. If this continues to sell off, then you're looking for support down at 1720, which gives you a long way to move lower and stocks a lot of room to the upside potentially. You can see momentum fading slightly on the 4-hour, but this looks like a fake out at this point and looks like we're probably moving lower, indicating that stocks might be moving higher over the short term. So let's look at this dumpster fire of a trading session. You can see I actually did leave my IRA position alone, so that was nice. Made 60 whole dollars there. It was great. Love to see it. But looking at my individual account, total dumpster fire minus $1,200. Gave up all my gains from the week. I was up about $780 going into today, so now I'm about $400 down on the week. You hate to see it. Not impossible to make that up here Thursday and Friday. But yeah, I just got chopped up like I talked about over the NASDAQ chart. I trade almost exclusively the NASDAQ, and I really couldn't get my hands around it. At the end of the day, it doesn't look that complicated, but when you're in it, it's definitely tough to do. I overtraded, should have just established a position and looked at it, or I should have left my position alone. I would have been in a great position for basically all of the price action that we saw today. Would have been up a couple of $100 based on the positions I had going into the day, but I just over-monitored, over-traded, thought that I was really putting myself in a better position, but ultimately turned out to be way worse. Otherwise, looking at my positions going into tomorrow, pretty much right back where I started. 2 bullish positions, 306 puts, have 2 of those at $1.16. Already in a profit because the market was moving higher. 307 puts at $1.23, $40 profit. Everything looks good going into tomorrow. We'll see if we end up getting any rejection at those levels that we talked about, but everything looks bullish and I just need to stay on my trading plan like I had going into the day. Everything turned out to be correct. I just got chopped out in the middle of the session and I couldn't reestablish myself before we started seeing those bigger moves to the upside. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the charts, where you think the market's going tomorrow, what you think of retail sales. Definitely put anything down there. If you got any whiskey recommendations, put that in the comments as well. I definitely like a good whiskey. Otherwise, if you got any value out of this video, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.